system, boy. High mileage and performance, boy.
Guyana Super 95 gasoline gives you more reasons to drive and is available at 56 service stations nationwide. For affordable price, high performance, and high mileage, choose Guyana's Super 95 gasoline.
Fuel it up and drive.
The voting process. Once you have been identified as the elector you claim to be, you would be given a ballot paper that is stamped at the back, top and bottom halves in your presence. On the ballot paper, provision is made for you to vote twice. Once at the top section where you vote for the party of your choice in the general election, and once at the bottom section where you vote for the party of your choice in the regional election. Make your mark in the box provided on the right of your choice. After you have voted, fold the ballot paper as shown by the election official. Dip the first joint of your right index finger in the ink provided and place the ballot paper in the ballot box that is there for this purpose. You would then have to peacefully depart the polling station. For more information, contact GCOM on 225-027729, 223-9653, email pro@gcom.org.gy, or visit GCOM's website at www.gcom.org.
Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of the Vantage Point. I'm your host, Lisa Hamilton. This afternoon we're here with presidential candidate of a new and united Guyana, ANUG, Mr. Ralph Ramkarran. Mr. Ramkarran is an attorney at law and senior counsel and a former Speaker of the National Assembly. He is now also the presidential candidate of ANUG contesting in the 2020 general and regional elections. Today we'll be speaking with him about his party and its journey towards these elections. Mr. Ramkarran, welcome.
Thank you very much indeed.
As we begin, ANUG was launched in January 2019. Can you tell us why did you decide to form this party? Was it something you discussed with the executives years in advance, or was it something spurred on by the 2018 no confidence motion?
No, this was spurred on by the failure of the government to honor its promise of constitutional reform, which it made and was very prominent in its manifesto of 2015. And it said within 90 days it will implement the process of constitutional reform. That having failed, a group of us decided in 2018 that the change of the constitutional system in Guyana was very important for the sustainability of our society. And the government having failed to do that, we felt that it is necessary for somebody to step in and take charge of the process.
Okay, and what were your thoughts when you were selected to be the party's presidential candidate?
Well, I was felt very humble and I thought it would be a burdensome opportunity, but one that had carried great responsibility. So I welcomed it also because I've been long behind a process of change of the Constitution to implement shared governance in Guyana.
Okay. And for some persons who don't know, the party's logo is a hand holding a mobile phone with the picture of Guyana on the screen of the phone. Can you tell us a bit about what this symbolizes?
We believe that most of the people of Guyana would like to see what they would term as cooperation between the two main political parties. Because let's face it, there's been a tremendous amount of dissension between the two parties and the two major ethnic groups over many decades. So, and we believe that the people want peace and unity among the people. So we believe that listening to the Guyanese people is very important, and that was what is behind our logo.
Like a phone, you're listening to that?
You're listening to the Guyanese people.
Okay. All right. And there are several parties contesting the elections. Can you remind us which regions you're contesting in for both the general and...
We're contesting regions 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 10. Not the regional elections. We're not contesting the regional elections. We're contesting only the general.
Okay.
But in the general elections, you have to contest the regional constituencies. You have to contest a minimum of 6. We're contesting 7.
Okay, and several parties, as I mentioned, are contesting as well. What would you say makes ANUG stand out among the rest?
We stand out because our flagship issue is constitutional reform leading to shared governance. That is our flagship issue. No other party is proposing that. Parties are proposing constitutional reform, but in a vague, general sort of way. We have a specific objective, shared governance.
And could you expound a bit more on that so our viewers can understand what you mean?
We would like to propose a system in Guyana. Now, it's for the people of Guyana to accept that system or some other system. There are several systems floating about. We are proposing that we have an executive or a cabinet or a presidency comprising of between 5 and 7 persons, but comprising the main political parties in equal numbers. So one doesn't have an advantage over the other. These 5 to 7 ministries or cabinet positions would control the rest of the government. Now, one person will serve, the chief executive of the country will not be the president. The chief executive will be this cabinet, or whatever you want to call it, executive, cabinet, or presidency. And each person in there will serve as the titular head, the president, for 1 year. So you have the opportunity of the main ethnic groups, youth, women, serving as the president of Guyana for 1 year. So nobody will be excluded.
And in pitching this to the Guyanese public, what would you say the response has been like before? Because this is nothing that any of them would have experienced before.
We believe, our reaction with the people of Guyana, wherever we go, and we're going all over the country, meeting people all over the place, has been very responsive. And people want peace in Guyana. People want, as I said, we're listening to the Guyanese people. And this is the reports, these are the reports we're getting, that people are interested in having a solution to our political problems, especially now that we're in the era of petroleum production, which will bring in a great deal of money, which we need to safeguard. And differences between the political parties only open the way for these funds to be misused.
And just for, I don't know if, it's for my understanding, I don't know if it's generally known, but in this case of shared governance, would it be limited to the number of parties in an election year that are competing? What if 50 more parties want to have a chance in this and they form themselves? Will they also be included?
You have to win seats in the National Assembly.
Okay.
And we anticipate, we are not about to overthrow the 2 main political parties. We expect them to remain the 2 main political parties. But we are trying to establish a system where they will share government equally. So the parties that win seats in the parliament, 2 main ones, and any third party that gets in.
Okay. And being that you were a former Speaker of the National Assembly, do you think that your experience gives you some form of an advantage to speak on these issues and see where the holes, etc., exist?
Well, oh yes, I was Speaker of the National Assembly. I was involved in the Constitutional Reform Commission and the report that that commission made. I was involved in as Speaker in the implementation of those reforms. And I was also, you must remember, I was a politician for a long time and involved in discussions relating to shared governance and to winner does not take all politics. So my entire decades of political effort and political work and political involvement have led me to this stage where I now believe, and several people agree with me who have been around with me, that this is the only solution to Guyana's problems.
And should ANUG gain a seat or 2 or more in the National Assembly following these elections, it will take time for the parties in the National Assembly to agree to this form of, constitutional reform. I mention that because I want to pitch this scenario to you, and it's based on how the system is right now. But first I must mention that you were a former member of the PPP's Central Committee and Executive Committee. You resigned later, I believe, in 2012.
Yeah.
I've pitched this scenario to several other parties. Suppose following the March 2020 elections, ANUG gains one seat in the National Assembly. It would be the party that is, the middleman between the PPP and APNU-AFC. Based on your relations with the PPP in the past, can Guyanese rest assured that you would be making decisions not based on favoritism or past relations? In that case, not in the case of shared governance as we know you want. But can the country rest assured that you will be making decisions based on the interests of the people and not on, favoritism for either side?
I think so, because while it is true I've been associated with the PPP for a very long time, and I left the PPP in 2012, and then my intention was not to get back into politics. But this failure of the current government to implement constitutional reform has brought me back. So this is the issue that I'm involved in and engaged in. And I've had relations with the PNC in the sense that during the Elections Commission you had to negotiate with the PNC during the constitutional reform process. The PNC was part of that process. In Parliament, the PNC was part of that process, and the reforms that had to take place in the National Assembly, the PNC had to be a part of. So I have been in touch, in friendly touch with all of these parties. I don't know what the PNC's and APNU's view of me now is, if I'm a friend, but I've been in negotiating postures with all of these parties. So I don't think that the people of Guyana need have any fear that I'll be partial one way or the other. And remember, I left the PPP in great disagreement and after a big quarrel.
Well, they can have the worry that maybe you would want to side with the other side as a result of that too.
We have a basic plan and a basic premise, and that can't change, and that's public. We want a government in which the two main political parties are serving in equal numbers. That is what we want, and we're not changing that for any party which we feel friendly to us. That's what we're putting to the Guyanese people.
And in this same scenario, it's just a scenario. I don't know how many seats ANUG would get, but in this same scenario where ANUG gets one seat, are you confident that you would be able to represent your party's voice, being that you're only one and there'll be...
Well, depends on how we get the one seat. If two parties get 32 seats each, and we get one, then that seat will be very important because it is the deciding seat. It holds the balance of power. And that is what we're aiming for, regardless of how many seats the two parties get. Our objective, and we're asking the Guyanese people to keep the political parties below the absolute majority and give us enough seats where we hold the balance of power so that we will be able to have the strength and the voice to encourage them to come along with constitutional reform. And of course, they will have little difficulty in, they will be not forced, I don't want to use the word force, but they will be more amenable to coming along with us because they know that they will be relying on our support to remain in government. So that is what we're hoping for, that the people of Guyana return the two political parties without, whichever one gets the more votes, without an absolute majority, and so that we will have the balance of power. But I must say, we're not asking the Guyanese people to give up their parties, If you are a supporter of the PPPC, and we're asking you to support us, if you're a supporter of the PPP, you either will win or lose at these elections. But if you agree with us and give us your vote, our intention is to bring the PPP in government, vice versa as well, to bring your party in government. So there's no way you lose. So when you vote for us, you win. You don't lose. And that is the message we're giving to the Guyanese people.
Their vote is a vote for shared governance.
Yes.
Okay. And another scenario, which might be the worst of the two. Should your party not gain any seats in these elections? Guyanese are concerned that parties pop up around elections time and then you don't see them, and the next elections they pop up again. What would be ANUG's presence should it not gain any seat in the National Assembly? Will you still be out there advocating?
Our executive is committed to continuing with this project. We understand that new movements have to make difficult starts sometimes, and that we may or may not appeal to the Guyanese people at these elections, but we expect that our proposal will attract support as we go along. Remember, we only started recently, but we intend to continue.
Okay, and now for some real-life issues, no more scenarios. Some of the major interests or concerns of Guyanese that stick out, especially right now, are the sugar estates, the management of the country's natural resources, job creation, and more. Could you summarize ANUG's position on each of these issues, beginning with the sugar estate?
We believe that we have all of these issues are matters which we are concerned about and are dealt with in our manifesto, which will be coming out very shortly. But take the sugar estates, for example. The problem with the sugar industry, and I noticed the PPP is saying that we will resume the estates, but as the APNU has been saying, the APNU AFC government has been saying, that the problems with the sugar industry didn't start this year, they didn't start last year, they started a long time ago. Excuse me. And both the factories and the fields were neglected over a long period. And that is what brought the sugar estates to the period of running at a loss. And one of the big problems was high production costs. Cost of producing was 32 cents a pound when sugar was being sold at 11 and 12 cents a pound in the world market. So we propose that those factories that cannot be restarted should be privatized, but that the land should be given either, the land should be given to workers of the sugar estates who are multi-ethnic, they're not of one single race, should be given to the workers on the sugar estates to engage in farming or other productive activities. Where it is not possible to privatize those sugar estates without the lands, because the people need the lands for whatever activity they intend to go into, that the workers should have priority, preference for jobs. We are very concerned that the government has delayed this process for so long. We are very concerned that they are privatizing these estates for coconut farming, which are not labor intensive. We intend to ensure that the workers get back jobs, whatever form the reforms to the sugar industry take.
Okay, and we've heard this pitch to have these workers take up these lands, but persons have also raised the concern about management. How can we be sure that these persons will manage the lands? And you hear complaints from other Guyanese that they too are in need of land. Why are these individuals getting, a first preference? What's your response?
They would be getting first preference because they were working there and they were retrenched. They lost their jobs. People who need lands, there's a process for them to get land. Lots of people have lands for farming all over. There's the MMA, for example, which have tens of thousands of acres of land, which are for rice farming. So there are lands available, and people who are interested can go through the normal process of getting lands. This is not a gift being given to sugar workers. They lost their livelihood, and the government and the people should try to ensure that they are getting back their livelihoods. And this would not be free lands. This would be lands which they would have to rent and they would have to make productive use of.
Okay, and what about the topic of resource management? But we know the key focus is on oil at the moment.
Well, the key focus is on oil. The key focus should also be on mining, which is a very important sector of the economy and has grown to be the top sector. But I'm very disappointed that the things like the local content has not been moving as fast as one would have hoped. Local content is very important. You're too young to remember, but in the days of the 60s and the 70s and so on, even 80s and so on, nobody could get a job in Trinidad. No foreigner could get a job in Trinidad. No business could go and open in Trinidad without the most stringent of conditions. Why was that? Because Trinidad had a very strong local content policy, and it has paid off. Trinidad is a country with great expertise, and they're helping Guyana at the moment, those exports. So we need a local content policy that will do two things, that will take advantage of what is available in terms of supplies, employment, and so on, and to take advantage of the possibility of training so that we can take on more local content. But I hope that that will materialize as soon as possible after elections. There has been a great deal of controversy as a result of the recent reports over the oil and the signing of the agreements. Very complex issues are coming out for. I don't think we can go into that here, but clearly what is needed is that these reports should be studied and that we should get Guyanese people, get impartial people to give Guyanese and opinions, various opinions, for us to choose the best as to how to move forward. People are saying to renegotiate. I'm not sure that that is the right course. It may be the right course. The oil companies are saying, look, we're a frontier country and the terms are favorable and compare with other frontier countries. So all kinds of arguments are in the pot.
Many things to consider.
Many things to consider before Guyanese are able to take a proper decision as to the way forward.
And if I can take you back to local content, you mentioned that Trinidad, their local content was very sturdy, so a lot of Trinidadians benefited. But we've heard a concern that Guyana doesn't have a lot of, the population isn't large, and it takes time to train persons, so there's that gap in between where we still have untrained persons. Is ANUG open to, having other countries from the Caribbean lend their expertise or their people, not necessarily, and the diaspora as well, not necessarily foreigners, but persons within the Caribbean region or the diaspora assisting?
Oh, ANUG is all for that. We support the assistance the Trinidad business and experts are giving to Guyana. We support. People forget that Guyana was heavily indebted to Trinidad, and that Trinidad gave up about $400 million in the Paris Club arrangements in the late 70s, early 80s. People generally forget that. So Trinidad has been very kind to Guyana. People remember the bad days when we were trading and the hostility that Trinidadians meted out to Guyana. Well, that was not a nice period. But there are other positives in our relations with Trinidad. So I welcome Trinidadians and other Caribbean people, other Caribbean experts, people from the diaspora like Dr. Adams of the EPA, who returned from overseas to serve Guyana, and other people. Yes, there are also neighbors, the Venezuelans. Their petroleum industry is in great difficulty, and there are lots and lots of Venezuelan trained people who are available.
You threw my mind over to the Venezuela-Guyana or the controversy, but we can't get into that either, not at this forum. What about job creation? That's also a very topical issue.
We don't need to propose any special programs for job creation because the oil resources are going to bring job creation. From next year, from this year, beginning this year, but from next year we'll be getting $300 million additionally earnings will be available to our budget for expenditures. And the spending by the government of these large sums of money will in themselves create jobs. In 5 years' time, we'll be getting about $5 billion US a year, minimum, perhaps more, depending on how much we produce. So jobs will be available as a result of government spending. The most important problem, one of the most important problems in Guyana, apart from health and education, is infrastructure. And infrastructure, spending on infrastructure, naturally creates jobs of all ranges, from unskilled right up to the very skilled. So what we need to ensure is that our money is spent productively, to put to productive use so that jobs are created for the Guyanese people.
Okay, and as presidential candidate, you have your opinions on this, and I'm sure it's shared by the other executives and supporters of ANUG. Are you open to presidential debates and even prime ministerial debates? Because we know that the University of Guyana would have recently held a forum with a few young people from the various parties, and they engage in a form of a debate or discussion. What are your thoughts on having a similar debate with the other leaders?
I'd be happy to engage in those debates.
Do you think it's something that Guyana should have? You know, every
it should have. Guyana should have something. There was there were efforts to have these debates before. They didn't succeed because the APNU, AFC, and the PPP were not interested. So we had a debate in New Amsterdam of the new parties which were formed, and it was
a town hall.
Town hall meeting. Oh, it was wonderful. It was excellent. And we had questions taken out of a box. People were asked to submit questions before. They were taken out of the box. We were asked those questions. So there was no favoritism. It was a great event.
Because we know many Guyanese are looking on at the U.S.
Yes, there you are.
Yeah, and they get a bit jealous. You know, they're having their debates.
Why shouldn't Guyanese have the opportunity of hearing us? I would like to talk to the Guyanese people in these events and to propose our policies, our main policies.
Okay, well, that's noted. And one of the arguments raised by some political parties as they're campaigning is the matter of age. They're saying that some political parties have men of age who are their leaders. As ANUG presidential candidate, how do we respond to this? And not only age, they've spoken to gender. The fact that we don't see a lot of representation from women, especially in leadership positions. What are your thoughts?
As far as the women issue first, there's a requirement for 30% on your top-up list. 30% must be women. And in your geographical constituency lists, together, women must be a minimum of 20%. We have exceeded both, I think. We have about 50% overall of women in our list. So we are promoting women. And if you look at our lists, we publish them all the time on Facebook and so on. Most of our people are young people. The vast majority of people are young people. I don't think all are young people. I must be the oldest, the most ancient person on our list. Now, so we have women and youth who predominate in our lists. The youth are a very big majority. Women, not a majority, but we've exceeded the quota for women. Now the age factor. When we're looking around for a presidential candidate, obviously youth was one of the considerations. Young people was one of the considerations. But eventually it was felt that I was the most suitable person. There was an election. People were nominated.
It wasn't a selection.
I wasn't chosen or chose myself. We had a general meeting. There were about 5 people who were nominated, among them women and youth. And I was, and I think that people looked at the fact that I had the most experience. That was the biggest factor. I had the most experience to carry the message that we wanted to carry. So that was the main factor, I think, in my selection, even though I am younger than President Granger.
And you mentioned experience. How would you say your party would work towards passing on the baton? Because that's another issue. Some persons agree, yes, that we want younger leaders. but do we just pluck out a younger person from anywhere and give them the responsibility to lead, or should there be a period in which they are trained rigorously to handle management?
Oh, they have to be trained rigorously because, for example, now the young people are dominating on our platforms. They're dominating on the platforms. They're dominating in our outreaches. Many of them sit on our executive in listening to the discussions. We're having meetings with members meetings. We're having candidates meetings. So young people who are the vast majority, are having the opportunity to be active in all of these things. In the youth forum that the UG had, one of our young people were there. So we are promoting young people. Now, even though the leading candidate in the US elections is 78, Bernie Sanders is 78. I don't intend to be around so long. So these are my last elections. Okay. And after these elections, whatever the position is, we will play out. It will be my last. And definitely moving forward, we will have young people leading us.
Okay, and just last month, ANUG, LJP, and TNM, they made an agreement for a joiner of lists. Can you state why you agreed to be a part of this, and would you say it gives the three parties an advantage now in the upcoming elections?
Everywhere we go, people are telling us, you should unite. All the parties should unite to make a big impact. Everywhere we go. All the small parties. Well, I would say the new parties rather than small parties. We might become big on March the 3rd, we don't know. But everywhere we go, that was the call, unity. We had discussions with all the parties. We didn't have direct discussions with Change Guyana, but messages came, were exchanged and so on. So we had discussions with many of them, but things didn't work out. It's not an easy process to have unity of the kind that was necessary. But after the nomination, we discovered the existence of Section 22 of the Representation of the People Act that provided for the joinder. We looked at it. We contacted the two parties that came along with us, and the other two parties were informed of this possibility of this process. They decided that the time hadn't arrived for them to engage with this process. So we engaged. The great advantage of it is, I think, it's more in relation to the message we're sending to the Guyanese people, a message of unity. And many people were very happy. The other advantage it has is, if you have 6,000 votes would give you a seat. Assuming none of us get 6,000 votes, but each of us get 2,000 votes. 2, 4, 6, we get one seat. If we get 4,000 votes each, we get 2 seats. Or if we did not have this joinder of lists, those votes would be discarded. So we can get seats in the normal way, get 6,000, 12,000, whatever, acquire seats, and the leftover votes will be counted. They will not be discarded. So that's the technical advantage we have.
Okay, and I spoke with Dr. Asha Kisoon. She was on our program, and she mentioned that as you said, the parties, if you get individual seats, you will have that, and the leftover votes will be counted collectively. How would you're deciding which party representative would take that seat of the leftover votes in Parliament based on who would have contributed the most?
No, we will do it in proportion.
Okay.
If we have, to simplify it, if each of us have 2,000 leftover votes, we'll have one seat, and the person will serve 1/3 of the time. Each party will have a member for 1/3 of the period in Parliament. So the first person will resign after 1/3 of the time. Second person nominated by the second party will 1/3, and so on.
So it's kind of similar to your idea of shared governance.
Yeah, very much so.
I see how it ties in. And with this joiner of lists, would you say that the two other parties involved with ANUG, they share the same views? Because remember, one representative for some period of time will be representing the three parties. We know you have your view on shared governance. I know TNM has its views on marijuana and etc. etc. Do you see that your views combine?
We have different flagship issues, the three parties, but we have no disagreement among ourselves about each other's flagship issues. And we have agreed that when we have joint campaigns, for example, it would be quite proper for each party to promote its own flagship issue. We agree that if we have a parliamentary alliance, we win seats in parliament, that we will discuss and negotiate our positions and our votes in the National Assembly. So we hope to extend the cooperation beyond the elections.
Okay. And how have your campaigning efforts been like thus far? We know you went to Berbice, Linden, etc. What's it like?
Our campaign is, well, we don't, I must be honest with you, we don't attract vast crowds of people. For the large party, excuse me, the large parties bus in a lot of people. They have the resources to give them colorful clothing and garments and flags and so on. We don't have that possibility. We don't have resources to advertise meetings either. So we have to go where the crowds are. So we go to the markets. We go to places where people are plentiful. We go to like Vredenhoop, Stelling. We had a meeting there. It was large numbers of people, if you go there at 5 o'clock, are crossing from Georgetown to Vredenhoop. And lots of people are there. They're passing and they stop and listen for a few minutes and move on. So those are the places we are going. And we went to the West Coast, we went to Lenora, we went to Tushin, we went to Parika in previous times, we went to Essequibo, we went to Essequibo, we went Berbice several times. So we're all over the place. Linden several times. I'm going to Linden tomorrow. Okay. We're at Linden this afternoon and tomorrow afternoon. I'm going tomorrow afternoon. So we are attracting people. People are listening to us. A lot of people have heard about us. And our message is getting across.
Okay, and Mr. Ramkarran, you have also served as a member of the Elections Commission in 1973, 1992, 1997, and 2001, correct? For the elections. Yeah. You've experienced a lot. In just a nutshell, what are your thoughts on how the Commission is progressing towards E-Day?
The Commission has great challenges. This Commission has great challenges. I tell you, the differences among the political parties are much greater now than they were in the past. The last elections I served on was 2001, and Robert Corbyn was the leading member of the PNCR at the time. He and I were the two leading figures. Now we didn't have this kind of. Of course, there were lots of differences of opinion, but we didn't have this kind of great. Great division and great hostility and disharmony over the elections process. And it brings me to the view that we need to now restructure the Elections Commission to have non-political people on it, but that's another issue. There have been challenges. Most of those challenges have been resolved. They're being resolved. The chairman is trying her best, I know. She's new to the elections, so there's a lot to learn, but I think she's picking up very fast and she's doing very well. Hopefully everything will go smoothly.
Okay, and you're supportive of the various observer missions that are coming to Guyana gradually for the election? Very
much so. I've met the Carter Center, I've met the European Union, and I'm very happy that they're here, and they'll give confidence to the Guyanese people about the rectitude of the elections.
And as we wrap up, Mr. Ramkarran, what are some of the upcoming activities of ANUG? What can we look forward to leading up to March 2nd?
Well, much of the same. We're on Facebook, we're advertising. I'm going on doing some spot advertising myself on TV. We're advertising on Facebook and Instagram. We're continuing our outreach activities. So expect much of the same. We're getting more and more invitations now, like this one from your good self and from the Chronicle. I wish to thank you once again, and the Guyana Chronicle, for this, for having us, for hosting us. So we'll proceed with this, and as time gets closer, to do more and more of this type of activity.
Okay, well, thank you for being here, Mr. Ramkarran, and thank you to our viewers for joining us. Please join us tomorrow for yet another episode of Vantage Point.
Thank you very much, and thank you to your viewers.
Great.
org.gy. The voting process. Once you have been identified as the elector you claim to be, you would be given a ballot paper that is stamped at the back, top and bottom halves in your presence. On the ballot paper, provision is made for you to vote twice. Once at the top section where you vote for the party of your choice in the general election, and once at the bottom section where you vote for the party of your choice in the regional election. Make your mark in the box provided on the right of your choice. After you have voted, fold the ballot paper as shown by the election official. Dip the first joint of your right index finger in the ink provided and place the ballot paper in the ballot box that is there for this purpose. You would then have to peacefully depart the polling station. For more information, contact GCOM on 225-02-7729, 223-9653, email pro@gcom.org.gy, or visit GCOM's website at www.gcom.org.